speech. We're going to go to it as soon as he's up, and we're going to talk about it. What do you expect? What do you want to see?
So it's my understanding that this round of sanctions is not going to be directly at Iran. It's going to be at their trading partners, and pretty heavy-handed stuff. And you got to understand, Iran has basically been under sanctions since before I was born, right? And so they have all sorts of, like, this is an extraordinarily intelligent, ancient civilization, the Persians. So they've figured out all sorts of ways to survive in and out and around all sorts of other sanctions. And I think if we start putting pressure on trading partners the way we've done to trading partners of Cuba, with the goal of simply driving this to the negotiating table, not to crush a society. So I don't know that you've destroyed 100% of the military, but you've gotten a lot of it. But the most important thing here is this has to end. Right, this was the most unpopular war at the start in American history.
We're going to go to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Full economic community, or you can choose economic isolation and subsistence. Mike Lee, what do you make of this?
So, big headline: a major financial institution is going to be sanctioned by the end of this week. The quote-unquote religious zealots all have their money in the UAE. I don't know all of them, but a lot of them. And there's substantial wealth from the leaders of Iran in their offshore money in the United Arab Emirates, in Dubai. So the compliance from Dubai, it is going to put pressure on them. But look, when you go with these sanctions and you want to kick these countries out of the dollar-denominated system, that's all well and good until the dollar is no longer the reserve currency, because people don't want to be kicked off it. And so we saw the Biden administration try to do this to Russia. And there are some boomerang effects and some problems here that could come up, some unintended negative consequences from using the dollar like a weapon. And I mean, look, if you start looking at the dollar as a reserve currency, there's nowhere else you can park excess reserves. Excess reserves meaning global trade is not a zero-sum game, right? So it's not an even exchange of widgets for farm goods, right? There's always going to be excess cash on either side. And as many problems as the U.S. has, show me a global bond market as liquid and as safe as the T-bill market, where you can get, roughly 4% overnight. So but if this can be weaponized against your country for the political whims of the United States in that moment, you start running into unintended negative consequences.
I got a little wince coming out of Marcus Lemonis here. Get in on this.
Of our debt. And do we need them to show up at holding $633 billion of our debt so far? Now, that's only about 1.5% to 2% of our total debt. But we need China as a buyer for our debt. We have the UK and Japan first and second.
I'll just push back on that.
Please.
They do business when they face the rest of the world. They're doing very little international trade with their own currency. They're doing it in dollar denominated. So they need our treasuries to back. That is where they're parking their excess reserves. So look,
not in gold. Not in Bitcoin.
Well, they've been moving away. That $663 billion was once north of $1 trillion.
Double. Yeah.
And so they are moving away, but they're running a dual deficit. And so it can go on for a long time, meaning they have a trade deficit and a fiscal deficit. So China was a merchant economy, and as they become more developed, their demand for for commodities, for oil, for iron ore, for all these things means they're in a structural trade deficit that's not going away, and they have a fiscal deficit because they are a communist country. And while centralized planning can do some things extremely well, in the end, it always fails. So plus, they have a huge demographic problem going on there. So in terms of our treasury, right, like the whole BRIC strategy, the whole BRIC idea was not to take out the dollar's reserve currency. It's so you had a method and a vehicle to get around U.S. sanctions, right? And so I wonder if this is one of the unintended consequences of this. But as an overarching, and I kind of wish I started with this, I think this is the right approach to Iran versus, the bombs over Baghdad approach.
Well, let me throw this piece out. We talked about this in the first hour.
Yeah, look, the issue is never the issue. The issue is the revolution. right? And the goal here is it doesn't matter how many times it fails. I mean, look at Gavin Newsom, look at California. He's seriously being talked about being running for president, and he has a chance to win, right? What has he ever been successful at other than winning elections? And he continues as
Good
these
haircuts.
Yeah, well, as these failures happen, and we all know that this government grocery store isn't going to work. What's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over
again.
expecting a different result. And it's like, but the left, they just play this narrative hot potato, right? And so it's not like once this fails, it won't be in the news and it won't be talked about till somebody starts it again. And then it won't matter because the idea is, again, the issue is not the issue is revolution. We need the government to take control of this. No one's ever going to talk about the fact that it's the government's fault that the prices are all out of control. It's always the rich, greedy person, okay? And we were talking about this on Friday, Jackie, with Luigi Mangione going after the healthcare executive, right? If you really cared about the cost of healthcare, okay, I don't think political violence is good in any circumstance, but your animus should be directed at the Obama administration for passing Obamacare, right? It shouldn't be directed at some executive who's getting shot on the street because, again, the issue is not the issue is the revolution, and they want single payer, centralized control, government run everything.
Right. Okay, but he's doing this. Regardless, he says that the laws are on his side.
Manufacturing facility in Maine last hour. He's telling voters America has seen an industrial renaissance since Trump took office, with factory jobs growing and wages rising thanks to trillions in business investment. And that is true, Mike. What do you make of it?
Yeah, look, I love to see it. This is how Donald Trump and kind of the MAGA movement came about, is talking about this, that look, the forgotten man and woman in this country, all right? And we need to make stuff here. And I personally think with AI, with robotics, already having the best regulatory environment that's improving, the best rule of law, the best capital markets, that 4 or 5 years from now, we should be a manufacturing juggernaut. And that should benefit a lot of the people that have been left behind over the last couple of decades. And to see J.D. Vance out there, the way he carries himself, look, this is why he's a hands-on favorite to be the next president.
Marcus.
You forgot